Hello, everybody, and welcome to Muse. Guess what? Muse Jam Session Recording 200. I know. If you've joined me for any or many of these, that's many hours of your life that we've spent together, but it's great to be here. This is a really fun session. It's not necessarily site-specific. It's focused on optimizing your content for the web, both images and text. But it's a session I enjoy. It flows pretty easily. I am going to check on Facebook Live. Sorry, this is always a little dramatic. To see how we're going there. It may or may not be happening. This is where I need support staff. All right. We should be good. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to check back and check on chat as we go along. Hard to tell. Like I said, it's always a little complicated, but it makes a boring recording, so. Okay. I'm going to believe what I see, which is that we are live. So my name is Danny Beaumont, and I'm a principal product manager on Adobe Muse. And in jam sessions, I call it a jam session because a colleague of mine called it a jam session 15 years ago. But it's a jam because we both play together. It's an opportunity for me to talk about things that I've learned from the community, for you to either submit comments into the Facebook Live page or into the chat area here within Zoom. If you're also watching this pre-recorded, you're likely on the YouTube channel. These are all great places to go to learn about the Muse tool. I'm just one of many folks on the Muse team, but I do enjoy presenting and getting feedback from the community. So I'm going to make the rounds for a moment in case you're new to the Muse application. If you've not been there yet, muse.adobe.com. This is a small website that the Muse team manages directly. It's a terrific, I'm going to actually check on chat. I've been known to talk to myself. I look like I'm live. I know, that's about all we can tell. I think I'm live. It says I'm live. So the microsite is a place that the Muse team uses to play, to just show off features within the tool, and it gives us a really quick way to communicate concepts. Yesterday, we refreshed this website. So the landing page is not different. It's the same as it's been since we released the responsive feature set. But if you click on into the tutorials, for example, we did push a redesign to the site live yesterday. And it's a fully responsive site. It's not built in Muse, actually. Everything but the landing page is built using Shopify on the back end. The reason for that is we had so many tutorials, so many events, so many site of the day submissions, and over 1,200 widgets, it became untenable to actually build the full microsite within Muse. But we did do that for a number of years. I think that's part of your job as a web designer in figuring out the best tools for the job. When do you use a CMS and when do you use a static website? But this is a new design. The content is predominantly the same, but accessing that content, I think, is much smoother. If you jump over to site of the day, for example, you can look not only at the site that's being showcased in the moment, but if you scroll on down, if you've had a site that's showcased or are interested, we now have the thumbnails for those non-showcase sites. There's also some social media stuff here, so I encourage you to share ideas with the community, with your friends. And if you have not done so, if you're working on a site, please go ahead and submit it to Site of the Day. This is how I learn a lot. Looking at the designs that are submitted, you can include your Muse source file if you'd like. You don't have to, but it's an extraordinary way for me to jam with you and play and learn from techniques that designers have used. There's also the widget directory. We're not going to talk about widgets much today, but this is such a terrific extensible aspect of Adobe Muse. 1 year ago, we brought up this back-end system for the widget directory. We have over 1,200 widgets, and they extend the Muse application. So if you're looking to connect Muse to something that's out there, you've got a client that has an existing blog, wants to have a back-end store like a Shopify store, things of that sort, it's definitely worth coming into the widget directory and checking to see through the little search field that's up here if that widget, if that customization is available to you. All right, on to the topic we're going to cover today. I'm going to switch over into Adobe Muse, and I have a couple files out here. What I wanted to talk about is how to optimize content so that it will load as quickly as possible within your Muse application. Some of this has to do with standard web best practices. Some of it has to do with just the fact that Muse does different things with files that may or may not be apparent. I've interacted with a number of customers that didn't really understand how images are handled within Muse. So it's definitely a good thing, whether you're new to the tool or just breezing through this because you already know the tool pretty well, to share some of the ways you optimize content. So I have some notes that I'm going to rely on today. I created a URL here, a tiny URL that I'm going to put into the chat on Zoom. I will also put this in the footer of the YouTube recording so that it's available if you want to follow along. These are notes that I maintain from time to time. It'll be out there if you want to swing back as you go along. So let's kind of take things really basically from the top. If you come from the world of print, which I did, or you're just brand new to the world of computers and web design is kind of the first foray that you've had, you probably are familiar with the idea of image content and vector content. Vector content can be anything from a line art drawing, let's say. Traditionally, let's kind of use a print metaphor. Let's say you're working on a magazine cover and you've got a photograph and you want to integrate with the photograph vector on content, let's say a logo. I know the first time I did that, I took drawing vector content in Illustrator, I placed it into Photoshop, which in essence flattened out that vector content and made it resolution dependent. Muse is a layout application similar to InDesign. It allows you to take kind of your purest content, so vector content, illustrations from a tool like Adobe Illustrator, and image content from a tool like something like Photoshop, or in my case, Fireworks, because I kind of grew up over in that side of the Adobe Macromedia world, but merge them together, lay them out within Adobe Muse. Now, through the years, Muse has continued to adopt more and more web standards. Some of the reason for that is because engineering got a chance to refine some of our features. Some of it is that the minimum browser requirements for the web moved up, such that we could adopt some web standards of CSS and HTML that we knew would consistently work across browsers and platforms. One of the promises from the Muse team is if you can design something on a design canvas within Muse, they will take responsibility for making sure that what you're seeing in the preview of your browser or on the design canvas will render across browsers and platforms. And that's important to point out. Probably the bane of any web designer's existence continues to be Internet Explorer. I was on customer visits a month and a half ago in New York City, and we actually went to the United Nations. And there was a woman named Kiko who uses Muse to do long-form stories for the UN. And she explained and reminded me that because she's dealing with customers, viewers of her long-form stories all around the world, she is reliant on Windows and the oldest version of Internet Explorer that could be possible. What Muse will do is if we allow you to render something, let's say we use CSS to describe vector content or SVG content. Let's say it's something as simple as a shadow that we apply to a container within Muse. What Muse will do is something known as graceful degradation. So Muse takes responsibility for making sure a shadow on, let's say, a button that may not work in an older version of Internet Explorer will generate what's known as a poster image or a rasterized version of that vector content. It may not look as terrific, it may not load as quickly in this older version of Internet Explorer, but we will assure consistency. So number one is pretty much the Muse application can be trusted to show you what it's going to look like across a number of devices. And just for simplicity's sake here, I'm going to come in and create a new file just to show you the beginning of the process. And I'll go ahead and stick with the default. So max page of 960, fluid width is fine. In the advanced drop-down settings, you have the ability to control one aspect of the resolution of your site through this drop-down here. We've got standard and high DPI. Now, there are features within Muse that if you asked me, I wouldn't have implemented. High DPI made me very nervous. The idea behind high DPI is that if the viewer of your website has a high resolution device, now keep in mind, we shipped this feature about 3 years ago. It's become much more common that an iPhone, Samsung phone, Google phone, for example, I don't know all of those and their status of resolution. I know this iPhone 7 right here is more like a tablet. It's so large. It's a 7 Plus, and it has what's known as a Retina display or high DPI display. We extended support for those high DPI devices within Muse with this dropdown. So if I come in and I select high DPI, I get a warning saying, guess what? This is going to make your file sizes larger. Are you sure you want to do it? And then go ahead and click OK. Now, the thing about that warning is that you don't have to worry. I was more worried than you should be. But the idea behind that warning is that depending on bandwidth, Muse is going to give more information for a file if that information is available. So I've gone in and created a new site. Again, I'm going to try to just slow this down. I know I go pretty fast for folks sometimes. I'm also going to glance at Facebook just to see why the heck I'm not seeing this session, because I want to keep an eye on chat for you folks. There it is. So excited. All right, we got 19 comments on Facebook. Lots of hellos. We're good, though. I should be able to keep an eye. If you have questions as I go along, please put it into the chat pod in Zoom or put it over here in Facebook. Few for that. Okay. So as I work here, there are a number of ways I can add content. For imagery, images, I'm going to want to place that content. And standard practice, if you're in an application like Photoshop or Fireworks, is when you say File New, you'll create something that may be 72 DPI. Now, keep in mind, there's dots per inch, there's the web, and there's confusion between the two. Some of what I've given you in the notes are articles that explain a little bit more about resolution in the web, a little more deeply than I can get into probably right now. But when you come to place an image within Muse, there's going to be kind of two worlds or two behaviors. At the expense of confusing you, I'm going to start where I am right now, and I've got this high DPI site that I've just created. I'm going to go ahead and do that one more time. I'm going to say File New. Again, add a page that's 960, but under the resolution, I'm going to stick with standard resolution, and I'll click OK. And now what I want to do is just place an image in Muse. So I'm going to pull down on File to place that image, and I'll browse to this directory where I've got some stuff to play with, I believe. Fine. This will probably do. Sorry. Okay. So I have, I've got a pretty good size image here. This is an Adobe stock image, and I'd like to work with it. And the first thing I want to do is just show you a little bit of the behavior of high DPI versus standard DPI. So I'm going to go ahead and select that image. And when I work with that image on the design canvas, consistent with InDesign, there's two ways I can place an image. One is I can press and drag, and that will set the resolution as I do it. If I were to just click and release, that image is going to place an actual size. I'm going to hit Command minus and just show how big that image really is. Now, this is the site that we created at standard resolution. I can tell how large the image is. If you ask me, we need to add a feature, which is here in this transform panel. I should be able to see the current percentage size of an object. I kind of keep forgetting to remind engineering about this, but I can tell how large that image is by grabbing the edge of the image, and as I drag it, notice I see a percentage value there where I'm dragging. So I can drag it right up to 100%. And what happens is when I place an image in Muse at standard resolution, it's going to place that image at 100%. Let's go do the same exact thing with the high DPI version of the site. So I'm going to switch over to that home recording there. Looks like Ale Pordelli's in the house, the ever-present Q and Cookie. I'm going to kind of let him hang out down here a little bit. All right, good to have you, Ali. If I come in and place that same image, so I'm going to say File, Place, pull down on File to Place. I'm going to grab that same image. And I'm going to once again just come on the design canvas and click and release. Now, if you switch between the two, what you'll notice is it's a lot smaller in the second instance. What happens, and this is kind of, it's a hard thought to get your head around, took me a while, is when it comes to high DPI devices, instead of being 72 DPIs, they're 2 times the depth of the 72 DPI. So if I were designing in Photoshop or Fireworks, I would set my resolution for my file to 144 instead of 72, which in essence would give me double that depth. When I work within Muse and I have a high DPI site, let's go ahead and just stick with that high DPI instance now that I kind of showed that behavior. Let me go ahead and close out the second one. We'll go back to that first instance. If I come on here and I hit Command minus and zoom out a little bit, what you'll notice is that second instance of the site is placed at automatically at 50% of actual size. What this means is when I'm working, when I place an image within Muse, if I place it at 50% or lower, and I've set the site settings to be high DPI, that image is going to be available for Retina displays, higher DPI images, browsers. Now, the way that manifests, sorry guys, this is like the toughest concept to ever communicate, I think. The way it manifests is if I were to go to a website, and let's say I have a high resolution monitor, and I've got good bandwidth. When I browse to a page that has that high DPI feature enabled, the first thing it will load is the standard resolution. So it's going to load very quickly. There's no consequence to this higher resolution image. What will then happen is asynchronously, which means in the background, basically, on that web page, the browser is going to load the higher res version of that image. And without refreshing the entire page, it's just going to re-render the image for me at the higher resolution. The advantage there is if, let's say I'm on a Retina display, I'm on my iPhone 7, and I've got terrible bandwidth. I'm somewhere out in the boonies, and things are loading very, very slowly. There's no real consequence to the bandwidth when I have the ability to load based on that bandwidth speed. Okay, let me give you a couple examples of this a little bit. I'm going to come in and just make this image a little smaller. I can even come in and crop it down. I want to get some other content on the page. So I'll bring this guy in. I like to also bring in some vector content. I didn't prepare this, but I want to bring in some PNG files that are resolution dependent. So let me go in and place that. I think I can do a quick search here. Let's try. I want to find a PNG file real quickly. Oh, let's see. No matter how much you prepare. Okay, let's see what I got here. Okay, there's a couple. Let's try just a few, just to show this off. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to come and place these guys. So I'm going to click and release some random logos that might need a background, we're noticing. Let's give this guy a nice fill. Steal something pleasant. And let's layer that back. Okay. I just want you to see a little bit about how this resolution business is going to work. So if you are playing with high resolution devices and you want to test the load time, you want to get a sense of what is the image going to look like at standard resolution, what is it going to look like on Retina displays or higher resolution versions. Lisa's saying, I'm saying that you place 144 DPI at 50%. Yes, if you are in, Muse will automatically do this. If you have set the site to be high DPI, when you go to place images, it's going to try to place them at 50% of actual size if you click and release. If instead, when you go to place, you come in and grab an image, let's go back to where we were before our search. Let's say I grab this one, which is a bit of a different image, and I press and drag it to place it. If I want to make sure it's going to load at that higher resolution, I want to make sure I never go higher than 50%. And that's going to be important when we talk about that in just a moment. I want to come over now, and I'm going to grab just kind of a testing tool. I don't believe you honestly need to put this on your website, but you could. In the widget directory under buttons, there's something called high DPI on or off. It's got some, not the most attractive thing ever, but an example of how this button could look if you were to use it on your site. And if you check it out, it's got a number of different states. It's really a technical button. We used it for developing high DPI and to allow you to test. But with that there, I can control whether or not my display will be the high DPI or not. So let's give this kind of a quick whirl. I'm going to come in and preview the page in the browser. So preview page in browser, and Muse is going to render the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now, when it did that rendering, it's going to render both the standard resolution images and the 2x instances of those images for high DPI. If I can zoom in really tight on this, you probably will not see much of anything exciting over Facebook Live or Zoom here. But what will happen, I'm trying to exaggerate this. Let's go even further in the hopes that you will see some of it. When I come in and toggle this high definition, right now this is standard definition, and there's a bit of fuzziness that you can see to this PNG logo that I have here. If I click high definition, what happens very, very quickly is that logo is going to load in at double the resolution. This image goes double the resolution. So I'll try this again real quick. If you keep an eye on this basket and the bread, if I toggle high definition off, you can see the edges of the basket, for example. So what I'm suggesting is this is a way for you to test how those high resolution images will load in and kind of decide, does it look that much different? Do you think it's going to cause a bandwidth issue? You're also, if you're one to use some inspect tools, so within the browser, Firebug, or just inspect within Chrome, you can look at the speed of load time as you change these from high definition to lower definition. So point number one is when you're looking at images, you can choose whether or not you want it to be placed in a high definition site and come in at 2x the resolution or come in as standard. And depending on the work you're doing, it's kind of easy to make that choice. If I go to, let's see if I can get here. Yeah, so I'm going to go to a site. This is a woman named Colette, and she lives in New York City. She is a dress designer. I went to visit her when I visited Akiko in the United Nations. They let me out of the house now and again. But Colette is a dress designer in New York City, and she's extraordinarily attentive to every little pixel of every element of her design. So this is her site that she built to show off her custom-made beautiful dresses. And it's an extraordinary site. She did a lot of work to just make sure that every image always looked to be incredible fidelity. And she's using the high DPI feature. So if you were to load this on a phone, you would get a quick load. Depending on bandwidth, you could then come in and get much higher resolution. So this is an example of a really intensive, image-rich site that's built directly in Adobe Muse, somewhat painstakingly. Colette's attention to detail is pretty incredible. So with that said now, we've gotten a sense of how images work here. There's a couple of nuances or ways that you can control this high DPI aspect of the site you've designed. So if I come in and open up my assets panel, I'll open this guy up. You'll notice something kind of interesting if you're not used to it, if you've not used high DPI before. When I placed all of these elements in the site, in the assets panel, I get a little 2x indicator right here. And what that's letting me know is those images that are placed on the site will appear both as high resolution and standard. Okay, pretty straightforward. If I decided that some of my images should be extraordinarily high quality and some of them I would really rather not bother loading a second instance of those images, all I need to do to change that definition is when you're creating it in Photoshop or Fireworks, make sure that you create it at, let's say, 72 DPI. And when you go to place the image within Muse, you're going to want to make sure that that image is more than 50%. So notice if this works well, I'm on the background landing. I've just dragged it to 52. If you keep an eye on the assets panel, when I let go of the image, that 2x indicator should go away. Ha, or not. I think it's a load refresh thing. Let's come back. It's just making a fool out of me. Let's try it again. I think I've been here before, and as I got there, I knew something was going to happen. Oh, there it is. So notice that that 2x logo is now gone. I don't see it here. What that's letting me know is that this image is going to load at a standard resolution. It doesn't have enough data to load it at 2x resolution. Okay, that's images. Let's talk a little bit about icons or line drawing. I want to say vector, but it doesn't necessarily mean vector. I went in and I grabbed a couple of icons that I've used in the past for various projects that were PNG. When Muse first shipped, we did not support something known as SVG or scalable vector graphics. So you had some rough ways of trying to bring vector content images into Muse. Since that time, Muse now fully supports SVG. And for any content that's not photographic, I highly, highly encourage you to go ahead and adopt and work with SVG formats and content. It just makes everything a lot smoother and a lot better. Let me go in and grab a little more content here. I'll move this stuff out of the way. I do want to, I'm kind of sorry these guys are white on black, but let me bring them up a little bit. That little cross is going to do no good whatsoever because it's just boring X. But let's kind of keep this camera. I think this is maybe a Pinterest thing. And I'll move it over here, and I'm going to bring over this guy here. I forgot to prepare this part of my cooked demo. But you can even see as I zoom in here how these are looking a little fuzzy. They are resolution dependent. They're PNG. They're probably transparent ping, which means that they will allow a background like this green background to show through. Transparent ping is probably a little larger than a JPEG. Again, in the notes that I've got for you, there's an article that talks about when do you use PNG, when do you use JPEG. I think what it comes down to is bandwidth, speed, and file size, and how things load on the web. The good news is that bandwidth is exploding with people streaming Facebook Live from a browser. There's a whole lot more that is heavier to load than icons these days. But one way that you definitely can work is if you want to include icons in your site, you can place them as PNG files. They're going to load a little heavier and be resolution dependent. I've got some other images or icons that I put into my Creative Cloud library. Now, Creative Cloud Library, you may have heard me talk about it in the past. I am incredibly impressed with the Creative Cloud Library. It is something that you can use to share with others, but it's also amazing to use on your own to just share between Adobe applications. So if you have a whole lot of vector work that you've drawn in Adobe Illustrator, you can place that into a CC library. The file exchange format there, because you're going from Illustrator to Muse, sort of on the clipboard in the background, that's going to automatically be SVG. You don't need to do anything special to make that happen. If I want to look at content that was created as SVG back in Illustrator, I really don't even need to go find that source Illustrator file. I can come to an item here and just select Edit. Creative Cloud Library is going to automatically look at what the authoring, the file type tool for that was. So it was originally created in Illustrator, and it's going to open up Illustrator for me just so we can pop in here. So if you Haven't been in Illustrator in a while. If you grew up in the land of Adobe and you remember the Creative Suite, there were things like smart objects. Smart objects is kind of what this behavior is like, in that it's placed here, but it remains fully editable in that SVG source format. So I can come in and make changes here if I think that something should be different about this guy, maybe wreck the shadow a little bit. Obviously, I don't even use Illustrator anymore much. Okay, I'll wreck the shadow that way. If I thought that was much better for my work, I can come in and make that change. All I need to do is just go on and close out that file and select Save. When I come back into Muse, if the demo gods do want to cooperate with me again, I can now have a wrecked shadow image here. Maybe. Let's drop this guy in. You'll notice that I'm getting a little bit of a spinning wheel. I don't know if you guys see that, but that makes sense to me because the Creative Cloud library is in the cloud, and it's doing a lot of heavy lifting between Muse up to the cloud into Illustrator and then back to the cloud and over. But you'll notice that the little rec that I made for my shadow has already updated in that library item. Now, the beauty with SVG, now that I have it here, is it's resolution independent. So if I come in and have these three logos placed together here, and I once again preview in the browser. So I pull down on File to preview the page in the browser. And this doesn't work as well anymore. It used to be you could zoom insanely in on browsers, but they don't allow you to zoom in that much anymore. And Zoom, interestingly enough, I can't zoom my screen in Zoom. It doesn't work. So I can't go in really large, but you can do this on your own. What you'll notice is that this camera is a little fuzzy, and this remains very clear and very clean. Now, we've done work within Muse to make it a lot more flexible. As I mentioned, some of it is when engineers get a chance to circle back and improve some of the things that we've done with the tool. I can now place SVG items. I can crop those items. So if I want to either use a command key combination or the crop tool here, I may come in and decide, sure, I want this, but I don't want all of it showing. So you can crop that SVG. Another terrific trick that folks don't always know, let me go ahead and move some of this out of the way. I can go and grab a slideshow. So if I go to the widget library, let's say I am a designer and I design logos. We know I don't, since I don't even know barely how to use Illustrator anymore. I'm going to grab, let's go with a blank slideshow. It's still going to have more than I want. It's also awfully large. Let's see. And I'm going to go ahead and grab some SVG elements. Actually, let's just do this from the Creative Cloud library. I think that works fine. I can come in. Let's show up some thumbnails here. Thumbnails. I also can control how things are being filled. Notice that you have the ability to make sure that an object is cropped either on one end or the other so that it always fills the container, or keep it proportional by cropping or showing basically black bars in the background. I always have to toggle between the two of these because neither of them make much sense to me. But if I come on in with my desktop icon here and just click and release there within the hero area, notice that it's clipping off one side to make sure that this side, the horizontal, is filling by clipping the top. I can come in and grab a second icon and place it there. So if these were illustrations of mine and I wanted to show it off, the fact that these are SVG means that they are going to load very quickly, be resolution independent across all my browsers and devices. So let's talk about that for a moment. You're probably familiar with fonts and text behaving this way. What happens is it's resolution independent vector content. So it's just going to load to the highest resolution that the device supports, like a font would. So pretty terrific that way. All right, I'm going to stop babbling here for a moment and glance at some of the questions that are here. So can you convert a previous site to high res? Jody wants to know on Facebook. You actually can. There's no reason why you can't. All you need to do is go into that previous site. So if that site's already in existence, pull that on File to Site Properties, come on in and change the resolution to high DPI. Now, if the images that you've placed happen to be, as we've said, 50% or smaller, you're going to get that 2x indicator and they will load at that higher DPI resolution. If they're more than 50%, and you'll be able to tell this really quickly. When you come into the assets panel, you can see everything that is loading at that resolution. You'll notice that since I blew out this logo here, I'm getting an indicator here letting me know that that is blown out. There's a couple other things that I hesitate to talk about because I can never demo them appropriately, but a few things are true with Muse and photos or images. When you go to place content, if I'm placing something rather large, if you remember, these two images were pretty darn large when I placed them at actual size. You do not need to worry about subsampling that image to 144 or 72 DPI. You may have a photo that's a 10 megapixel photo. It's very large, taken on an iPhone 7 Plus, for example. Muse will automatically look at the website that you've designed, look at the placement of an image, and they will subsample that image for you. If you ever are curious to kind of examine what happens here, what you can do is just place one image on a page within Muse, preview it. Let's just do this. Why not? Life is short. I'm going to come and copy this guy, create a quick, really clean Muse site because I like it to be simple. I'm going to pull down on File and preview the site in the browser, or just the page, right? And I've got basically that image placed here. If I right click and go ahead and view the page source, whoa, you can see I've been zooming in a lot. Very easy to see, but let's go even smaller. It's kind of easy to see quickly what's gone on here. So notice that I've got an image and it's got kind of a funny name to its own. It's not necessarily leveraging the original image that I placed it. And that's because when I placed it, I scaled it down. So Muse is going to automatically go in and do the right thing with some of these images. If I come in and do another number of things, I'm going to come in and place one image. I'll go to that same image. Now we can do a smaller one. Let's try a smaller one. See if I can learn how to do this thing. I use a funny trackpad and it catches me off guard from time to time. I'm going to come in and crop that same image. And again, if you're into experimentation, you can do this. But under hyperlinks here, I can give it a little tooltip or an alt tag, and I could call this one regular. And I can call this one scaled. These are just alt tags that are going to show up in the code. Let's try this guy and call it cropped. And let's do one more. Guess what we're going to call this one? Exactly, rotated. I know, quick, huh? Let's preview the page again, and let's look at some of the code. So view page source. What happens is Muse is going to do its best to render as few images as possible. So we've got that original source image, which is here. And you know that here's that regular, that's my alt tag. So I know that's the regular one. The scaled one is doing a different image. So Muse makes a decision. It says, can I just use code, CSS, to scale an image, or is it better for me to create a new instance of that image and render it? And it makes its own intelligent decision. For the cropped instance, it's also rendered it again. And in this case, the rotated instance, it's rendered it again. Sometimes when you look at this, it will be referencing the same source image, but as I mentioned, we'll be using code to crop it or rotate it or scale it. But it's easy to tell pretty quickly how that's going if you have it set as high DPI. So let's come back here and just go on into my site properties. Change that resolution to high DPI. I'm going to click OK. We're going to do this just one more time. Go ahead and view my source content. Depending on whether or not the code gods want to be kind to me, I should see 2x instances of these sites. but it must be time to stop looking at code. Let me just try to do this really quick. Okay, so notice here, I've got my standard instance. So there's the source, that's the regular standard resolution. Muse has gone in and said, hey, for a high DPI device, go ahead and do this 2x version. So twice the width, twice the height, compressed into the same space, in essence. So that magic just happens for you automatically. All right, looking for more questions. All right, looks like folks are a little quiet. Let's talk about some other things. Jam sessions, a long time ago, I decided that it's not embarrassing to be honest to our customers. If we tell the truth, tell you where we're at, and you're trusting us to build your sites, we're all going to be okay. So let's talk a little bit about some other aspects of Muse that you should consider as you're working. One feature that Muse has is the ability to define an icon up in your browser corner. It's called a favicon or a favorite icon, and we do support browsers for that. We've kind of dropped the ball a little bit, in my opinion, and we have not built into the application support for additional icons. So if you want to make sure that if your website is shared via social media, the icon that's used there is good. If you want to make sure that the icon that is used on iOS devices like an iPad, if you were to save your website onto the desktop, is good. There are some tools that will allow you to do that. In the meeting notes that I've included here, let's just go over there, take a look at it. I've given you a link to a little bit of help that came from Chris Kellett from 123 Muse. I just saw it in here. Where to go? Okay, it's just called cheat sheet. And in it is just a description that allows you to actually grab some embed code that you can put inside your Muse application that will allow you to control the way the icons appear for iOS devices. It's something that Muse should do for you. We do some basic work with, as I mentioned, favicon, so favorite icons in the browser. And the way you're going to want to do that is go in and render any graphic element, whatever you want to be your favicon, and you're going to want to make sure that it's equal in height and width. So it could be 200 by 200, it could be 32 by 32 in size. Let me see if I go to the Ultra Picnic site. And I go into site properties. This is where you'll find it. And if you go over to, yeah, did I really ship that without it? If I go to the content area, notice that I can select a favicon image here. I'm going to fail at finding something that's perfectly square. So let's ask the Google or ask the search here within, hold on, give me a break. 1 second. I know you can't give me a break. You're not even giving me a hard time. This is what happens when you talk to yourself. Let's see. It's got to be something on here. Who knows what this is? All right, we've got some favicons. So these are individual icons. The rule is basically, as I mentioned, that they're the same height and width. So let's see how it goes. I'm going to grab vector PNG, which is a PNG showing vector content, not to be confused. Let's grab lamp instead. I don't want to be confusing. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Now that source image, if you could tell when I previewed it, was probably 400 by 400 in size. It will render as a favicon here. So we go in and render it, I think 3232, 6464 for high DPI devices. It will be part of the project when we upload it to your hosting platform or when you preview in browser. So if I were to click OK now and just go to an individual page and preview this page in the browser with my fingers crossed, I've got that lovely little favicon just there in my site. Now, you may want to go a little further with this. Let's say you like that for the overall site, but you'd like to customize them on individual page basis or even an individual master page basis. Let's move this over here. Oh, Ollie. I'm just going to forever have your Ollie queue. It's okay. It's good to have you. Let's say I want to go to an individual master or an individual page and change that favicon. I can always come to the icon, the thumbnail for the page in the site plan, either here or here. Right click, go to page properties, and under options, notice there's that favicon. I may come in and change it and go for the pencil ruler eraser favicon and open that up so that it will be different for that individual page. Now, in my experience, I think it has to do with some level of browser caching. If you do this, you like it, you preview it in the browser, you think it looks great, then you go back and change a page or a site level favicon, it may not show up on your machine. You may have to try to really clear out your cache because somehow I think different browsers cache it a little more than they should. The change does happen, but it's not necessarily visible on your own machine, depending on whether or not you've cleared out your cache. Jody wants to know if we have any new SEO features. Nothing that comes to mind right now. It's possible. We have not pushed out a release in a couple months. And if you want to know what we're working on for future development, I encourage you to come join our private pre-release. If you just type into a browser museprerelease.com, that will take you to a space where you can go on in and test that for us. Let's see. I'm going to go back to my list. If you have questions, please put them into, I've got one maybe in the Q&A here. Comments can grab the others. We do not have to go for a full hour, believe me. Okay. All right, I've got a request for those link for the notes. You can type this in a browser. I tried to make it kind of similar. If you go, simple, I mean, if you go to tinyurl.com/musejam, so MUJAM dash high DPI. I'm going to go ahead and put that into, let me try this. May or may not have done that. Sorry, guys. Okay, just putting this into the chat. Okay, back to questions or topics. So we talked about some bits. I was playing around a little bit with icon fonts. I was hanging out at Font Awesome. So there was a time when Muse allowed you to not support SVG, and a good way to sort of get around that would be to create a typeface of icons that you could load up in Muse. So I don't think that there's a lot of relevance to that any longer, in that any icon you want. So let me show you a little bit what I'm talking about. If I go to Font Awesome, Font Awesome has an awesome amount of icons. So just about any icon that you might be after. It's free. You can download them as SVG content and just copy and paste them into Muse. Or if you want to, I was digging into this. I think they stopped allowing you to create your own web font. There are third-party widgets in the widget directory. For example, Muse Gain has one that allows you to access these. I'm going to kind of just show you this a little bit quickly. So let's say you want, it's kind of picnic weather out here. So if I say basket, no, that's not the way to type it in. Danny, let's try this. So shopping basket. Let's say I really like this shopping basket, and I want to be able to access any of these favicons quickly. I just did a quick search. Muse Gain has something for Font Awesome that I've loaded into Muse. So if I come on in here and go to our little scratch page that we got going on here, get this out of the way. Let me try this here on the fly. If I go to the widget library, not there, the actual library, I've got the Font Awesome Pro. So I can come in here, see if the world wants to be kind. Notice icon name here. I could just copy this here so I don't make a mistake in typing shopping basket. If I come over here, I believe, if I type that in there, let's just try shopping basket and hit tab, maybe. Never do something live that you haven't practiced. I can now come in and select that guy and typing T on the keyboard, change it to about 100 pixels in size. Notice that it's rendering on the screen. I may have pushed my luck here. Let's try that again. Poor guys. This is like catching them off guard a little bit. Let's just try phone. So I could type in a name from here when I know exactly what that name is. But notice that it's loading that automatically for me. Now, as I mentioned, it's a quick way to access them. You may find it's just as easy to work with SVG as you're playing, but being able to have one widget that has access to all of the Font Awesome, assuming you know how to type in the handle, the name correctly, can have its advantages. When it's loaded here, the widget does allow you to come in and colorize these aspects as well. What else do you got, folks? So Lisa says, go to the glyphs panel. I don't know if you're talking to me, but the glyphs panel, if you load a font, that is correct. The glyphs panel is going to reflect that. I've done it in the past. We got a little bit of time, and I haven't made a total technical fool myself. If I pull down on File to add and remove web fonts, see how this goes. It's not going to go well for me. I'm going to go to self-hosted, and I'm going to go ahead and browse. I changed computers, and I don't have any self-hosted fonts right now. But I know that back in the day, I created some icons using, looks like Fontello for responsive. I'm going to go ahead and select these guys and choose it. So basically, I'm loading in a number of icon fonts that I created using Fontello so that I would always have them available. This is kind of getting to that glyphs panel moment. So if I click OK and hit continue, the thing that's not going to work for me is I have to load the font in the browser or in the application first here too, or at a system level. So when you do self-hosted web fonts, you do need something to render it with inside of Muse. So I have to go in and not only load the web font, but make sure I have that true type font loaded as well. So I'll double click that and install it. You can kind of get a glimpse of what I've done there. It's a number of icons that I wanted to use for my website at the time. Close that out. Question is whether or not Muse is going to update. Oh, is it going to be nice to me? Click OK. Might need to do that one more time. Silly girl. Self-hosted. Get this guy. Try that one more time. So I'm going to that folder level. I'm going to choose it. Go ahead and hit continue. All right. Because the demo gods are being kind today, that worked. So now when I click OK, what do you mean deleted? Silly egg. I guess so. What are you deleting on me there, Muse? Okay. Now, if the demo gods continue to want to be kind, I can come in here and in my glyphs panel, I'm going to want to make sure I select that font. Sometimes it's just not a good idea to show some things. So PRC, RESP, and notice that I now can see all of these fonts. So in this example, what I did is number one, I went to Fontello. I couldn't remember if it was Font Awesome or Fontello, but I went to Fontello. I chose all of the icons that I knew I wanted to use on my site. I then created a web font using that tool. It didn't cost me any money. I saved it out as a web font. I downloaded it to my machine. I've now installed it as a self-hosted web font. I've also made sure I have the TrueType instance so that it will render in the browser for me. And using the glyphs panel, I can come in now and basically select these, treat them as a typeface so I can apply colors to them, shadows, things of that sort. And they're readily available. They'll be uniform in size. I can save it out as a graphic style, paragraph styles, things of that sort. So it behaves like a typeface, but it gives me a custom set of icons. Yay. Okay. There was any in-depth training for responsive, says Lisa Maxwell. It's probably a good time for us to kind of come to closure a little bit. There is. If you want to, muse.adobe.com has a good tutorials page. There's 2 places you can learn. If you do not want to hang out at Facebook all the time and watch me live here, you can go and look at past recordings in the events area. These are all hosted on YouTube, so you can scrub through it, get to the good parts, skip all the fluff if you'd like to. Another great place to learn is the tutorial section. If you happen to have a LinkedIn or a lynda.com account through your work, or that's something you pay for on your own, I just completed a 5-hour and 50-minute training called Muse Essentials. It goes very deeply into everything from file new all the way to responsive design. So that one's fresh. You can always sign up for LinkedIn for free for a week and watch it quick. It's 5.5 hours, so you got a lot of work to do. Another place to go that's great if you are wanting to learn about responsive is how to create a responsive website in Muse. This is a little older. I've learned a lot in the year since I recorded that up. That one's about 1 hour and 5 minutes. It does come with also a demo asset that you can learn more about that responsive feature set. There's also jam sessions in the YouTube channel that you can check out. All right, if you have any shout outs for ideas that you'd like to see covered, as I mentioned, this is Muse Jam Session recording number 200. So we've covered just about everything one can think of. There's probably about 24 topics that I rotate through, but I'm open to suggestions. You can send me an email, don't spam me, Danny@adobe.com. And I'll be back here in 2 weeks. Not sure what the topic will be at that point, but send me some suggestions. And come join the private beta. It's a great place to hang out and give us feedback as we evolve the feature set for the tool. So thank you, everyone, for your time. I'll see you in 2 weeks or on YouTube. I'm going to go enjoy this sunny day. I hope you do as well if it's sunny where you are. Okay, talk to you soon.